Ladies, gentlemen, and non-binary pals, please give a warm welcome to our guests and friends on today's wonderful episode of Creative Recharge. Today's guests include Amy Long, yay!
Hello.
And Tom, woohoo! And of course, your hostess with the mostest, Mwah. Hello. Here we are. Yes. Well, we made it, and that's an accomplishment. Oh, what a weekend, right? What a weekend. So, thank you all for coming. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Amy, for coming, even though you're like, I don't know what.
I think.
Like, no, but please come because trust me, you will have something to bring to it. I feel.
Yeah,
confident.
I think so. I agree. I think I'll find something.
I think so. So I'm so glad that you still brought your courage with you and joined us, even though you're like, I have no convictions about this. And I'm like, excellent, good. Mm-hmm. Let's get a neutral party here. So just to get everything out of the way, of course, the weather. If anybody would like to share their weather, I would love to hear it. Right now, it is 80 degrees in our neck of the woods. And it is 58% humidity in my room. No telling what it is outside. I think today's high is supposed to be 86. So if anybody would like to let us know in chat what your weather's like, I definitely want to hear it. Autumn is my favorite time of the year. Mostly because the fantasy of not sweating while I walk to my car, like blooms. That fantasy blooms of being able to walk to my car from the house and not break out in a sweat before I actually buckle up. It's usually we're close to winter by the time the fantasy fruits, but here we are.
Well, it's currently 6:30 in the morning for me. So the temperature is about 55 Fahrenheit. I did translations on Google, so
that's nice. And you're in spring, right? So
yeah, we're going to spring.
Mid-ish spring right now, or is it?
Yeah, we've been getting like mid temperatures, like nice and warm to cool.
So are you still getting cool nights and warm days, or is it more?
Yeah, it's mostly cool nights. It's starting to warm up in the days. So yeah, it's not like go outside t-shirt weather and shorts kind of level, but it's still kind of, it's not winter.
Yeah, you're approaching the picnic weather.
And we're getting there. Yeah, it's warming up.
Nice. I have seen lovely pictures of Australia and how, like spring does sound like a beautiful time of year to visit.
It is really nice. It is.
So, I can imagine, I can think of some of the pictures I've seen of Australia this time of year. And it's like, oh, it looks nice. Like it's not out to kill me. That's cool.
Yeah, pretty much.
Even though I probably touched the wrong plant and they're like,
it's not that bad.
It's
not as bad as it's made out to be. You don't like step off the plane and like have to roll for your life save or anything. Like you're okay.
I hope not, because that is truly let's see if Darwin works. Survive deplaning. Although I've had a couple plane departures like that, not in anywhere near Australia, but I've had a few where I'm like, are y'all trying to see who's sober enough to deplane? What's happening here?
I did have a plane ride, I still remember, where when we landed, everyone clapped because no one was sure if we were going to land.
Been there.
Oh,
been there where we clapped. Yeah, where like the turbulence was so bad. I have been in planes landing in America and had departed for America where by the time we landed, the oxygen had already dropped down automatically. And then there's, the co-pilot going, we're sorry about that. We couldn't stop it. It's the turbulence. When it hits a certain point in this old whatever model, they just pop out. Everybody, don't worry, we're fine.
Oh my gosh.
And we're like
so
already
scary.
Coming into descent, and I'm like, good. Oh, that was one where I genuinely was like looking in the mirror. Do I look green? Because I feel like I've turned the color green. Like that was how.
Oh no!
The turbulence. So.
I just remember having the thought because it was flying between Greece and Albania, and there's those scary mountains, and it's like could you turn this into a roller coaster? And it was the thought of, except I don't think roller coasters actually go sideways.
Oh,
I don't think they actually have figured out a way to make.
I don't know that I want a
sideways.
plane to go sideways either. Quite honestly, not like that.
That it's like, no, I don't think you can quite turn this into a roller coaster because
Mm.
that's a weird feeling when the plane all of a sudden just scoots, a couple 100 feet to one side.
Yeah, that sounds a bit stomach dropping for sure.
Yeah.
Before I forget, we may be able to snag a wild Maggie a little later in the show. She's going to try her best to join us. She's got all sorts of, unplanned things have happened today. So, but she still wants to join us, and so we may still catch a wild Maggie at some point. So she did go ahead and say hi, and that she is going to try to pop in for the second hour. Nia is here. Hello, sweetie. Tom is here doing double duty in the chat. And Carrie is here. Hello, hello. Megan, it's like I just saw you. It's fantastic. And StreamYard jumped. Okay. I am like so good at scrolling. I'm so talented. Laura, so familiar.
Long time no see.
Yeah, and Charlie, hello. We got to hang out with Charlie in the pre-show party. Diana's here. Hello, hello. Here is CB, double streaming, like you do. Dalla's here. Hello. I think Dalla's working on some editing work.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just scrolling through to make sure we did. Oh, and there is Eva. Hello, hello. One of our wonderful mods who was so fantastic on Saturday when we got storm botted or whatever it's called.
Yeah,
it was
hardcore.
Intense. It was intense. But yes, so.
And that's why we're keeping, some settings for right now.
Yes, we are keeping settings where you have to be subscribed for at least a minute before you can chat. And then we are in slow mode just in case. We're going to have those settings for probably a few weeks just to make sure that we don't stay on any trollbot web radar. Since they apparently don't like any impediment, they are easily deterred, it would seem. So a quick summary of today's episode. We're going to talk about contemporary fiction. And what do we have to say? Okay, so what is contemporary? In theory, contemporary is anything in modern existence. Specifically, it's usually it doesn't take place further back than approximately 10 years from when it was published. So if it was published this year in 2021, it would not normally have the majority of the story take place further back than 2011. And that's what we mean. Now, it can, but normally with contemporary fiction, it's truly meant to at least feel present day. Because it doesn't really get historical fiction till 30 years in the past. I guess the old Back to Future rules. Not really, but that's how I remember it. And anything that happens in modern life would be up for grabs to discuss or to take place in contemporary fiction, as long as there is not other mitigating factors. Angels don't walk the streets ordering hot dogs off of vendors.
No hot vampires.
Not actual bunyips. Did you see the eye roll? Yeah. So.
They're real. Come to Australia and find out.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Sure. Well, one day when I'll get there, we'll find out. And so what does end up being shown in contemporary a lot is family drama. You can have police dramas in there, although it's more of the slice of life type, and that is where anime and mangas, essentially their contemporary is, they call it slice of life. I really like that term. So I do tend to cross over and use it in other things. But so police stories that are really about the lives, or say prosecutors' lives, where there's a big focus on that, would be contemporary, versus if we're talking about solving crimes, that's still under crime/mystery. So that is the difference. Trying to think of what else. Tom, do you have anything more to add about what is contemporary?
It has to do with, I think mostly I got it right, but it's that part of where it doesn't belong in any other genres, and it takes place in the present.
So
with present problems.
Yeah. There are areas of fiction that you would think could be contemporary, and for a variety of reasons, some of which we are definitely going to discuss today, they're not. So, for instance, a lot of queer stories would technically belong in contemporary. However, because of a variety of reasons, some of them good intentioned and some of them not, they get pushed over into queer content rather than just contemporary fiction. Because to me, whether, no matter your sexuality or non-sexual sexuality status, if it's about today's problems, it is contemporary. So, and so yes, in theory, no matter people's skin color, it should be a contemporary genre setting, or it should be labeled as contemporary. And yet there's also these variety of pushes to move content into urban if it involves Black people in particular, even when it takes place in the country. Yeah. So, and that would be a segregationist situation that's happening in the publishing world. So we will talk about that. But that is essentially contemporary fiction is now. It is today's problems, whatever today's problems are. If you're going to talk about Miss Rona, you're going to talk about the pandemic, that is contemporary fiction. Particularly if it's not about actual people, like real people living their lives, but it's about fictionalized people. That's contemporary. So, if we hope that you will enjoy today's show, we'd like to make a suggestion, encourage you to click like if you're having a good time, or if you're feeling like you're getting something out of it, and maybe share with others. And if you are new here, we would love to encourage you. We are encouraging you to click that subscribe button. And if you are clicking it, do be sure to ring that bell so you're sure to get notifications when new content posts. Beyond that, here we are at the first hour where we talk about what we like about the genre and including hot takes. Would anyone like to get started?
Yeah, I actually like thinking on it. I think because contemporary doesn't have the influence from all those other genres, it means that it focuses and it can go into more depth into itself. Like, say, for example, like, person going to college, coming of age, finding themselves, that sort of thing. It can become very character focused, very relationship focused, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And because that is so dominant as well, it kind of can add more depth. And I don't know. That's my take on it anyway.
Yeah. I like that there is, in contemporary, you're able to focus a lot on, as a reader, you're able to enjoy relationships and really see how people live. The thing is the only actual experience I've ever had is living my life. I would love to be able to step into other people's lives and what is it like living their life, at least like sort of a slice of it. And that is what I love. That is actually what I love. Anime slice of life is my number one favorite category of anime, even though everyone else is like, oh, it's so boring. And I'm like, are you kidding? Also, hi, have you met me? Cottagecore content. Yes. I love me some good cottagecore, and you're definitely going to get it with slice of life. And you definitely can get it in contemporary fiction as well. That whole, yes, I want to dream about my cottage in the woods and having tea and chickens. Let me have my fantasies. Um,
I think there's a Sims expansion for that.
yes, exactly. Oh gosh, you just don't know how much I want the expansion. But yeah, that I love that stuff. I eat it up. I'm like, yes, please let me watch all the cottagecore content. All the like, tell me all about your latest teapot. I want to see it. I want to hear about it. Let me know how it is. Crochet a new teapot cover. I'm here for all of it. But not just that thing. I love it. Sometimes I very much enjoy family dramas, particularly when it's not a family. Our family had our own dramas, but family dramas are unique to different families and their backgrounds. And I definitely love that stuff. Like, oh, is it a family drama where maybe it's a married couple, but one side of the family like immigrated recently, like in the last 20 years. So they still bring a lot of their experiences from their previous country they lived in versus the other family. And so there's conflict and there's just different backgrounds. I want to read all of that. Particularly if it's well edited, I want to watch it too. Like if it's a TV show or a movie, I'm interested in it. I like that kind of thing because you get kind of peeks into how people live their lives and their thought process, what they value, what they don't. And I've really learned as an adult that the things I value is not necessarily common. It's not necessarily what other people value. And so I love to get a peek into how other people live their lives and what they do. Also, people who have been guests in our home have definitely told us, like, your family talks about very different things than everyone else's family at the dinner table. And I'm like, you don't say. You all don't discuss, the latest discovery of octopus in the South Pacific. Is that not like?
I mean, that sounds interesting.
Dinner table conversation. That's dinner table conversation at my family since I was a little kid. Like, before I could read, we were already discussing. Like, Dad would bring, like, look at the latest National Geographic, and this is pretty much he'd give a rundown of the article and we'd look at the pictures and then we would discuss what would that be like? What would it be if you were walking on the beach and you saw an octopus? Whatever what is children want to talk about, But that was our slice of life. But that's how I learned. Other people's slice of life very different.
It's very observational.
Yeah. I used to love watching. Well, okay. So for instance, I don't know if y'all are familiar, but Charlotte's Web, the book and the movie, that is straight up contemporary. At the time it was written, it was contemporary. Now it's, cottagecore, sure. But I loved it as a kid because it was farm life and there was a lot of information about, how farm families were interacting with each other. No, Fern, you cannot have a pet pig where, a business family. Farm is a business. He's got to go. These are the kind of conversations they were having in that family, but they didn't have those kind of conversations in my family. There were other reasons I wasn't allowed to have a pig. There were reasons my parents lied to me about why I couldn't have a pig.
Oh, it's so nice and chilly where Spence is.
That's chilly.
But they're not doing well.
She's got I'm sorry you're not feeling well. I think she's got she's surrounded by several big lakes. So she may be having the lake effect. I don't know. So that's like what I love about contemporary, and I've always kind of enjoyed that, at least that side of it. Yes. Now again, I want to point out, when Charlotte's Web was written, it was not intended directly for children. It was not a middle grade book. It was just a contemporary fiction told from the perspective of a pig. Like, why not? So that contemporary fiction definitely sort of changes over time. And the books can essentially come out of the contemporary genre and be reclassified later as people's classifications of genre change. But, since we're all writing in our time right now, that's why we're talking about it like that.
Yeah, one thing to always remember is genres, just like societal norms, are contemporary and are subject to change. There is no absolute. It will never change. It will always be this way. I mean, case in point, They are removing the study of Greek classics and Latin classics from requirements for law schools at Yale now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is no longer considered an essential, and why do they need to learn this? This is not what is needed in today's society to communicate with each other. We have new ideas of law. And so the same goes though for every genre. And like, but to go for the hot take stuff, what I always enjoyed about contemporary fiction is that it's one of the few genres that do tend to concentrate more on conflict resolution. Like, how do you actually resolve this without a magical MacGuffin?
Mm-hmm.
You know, what is it you need to say or do to keep a friendship going when one of you has made a big mistake, but you still want to stay friends even though there's now this big rift between you? Contemporary fiction, since it's very character focused and especially relationship focused, will actually go over, all right, in this writer's experience, here's at least one way to resolve problems between people, you know, that does not involve death.
Growing up, I read plenty of contemporary fiction, and I really benefited from it because I got lots of tips on how to establish friendships, how to maintain friendships, and what to do when friendships, hit a bumpy patch. I got a lot of great hints and tips from that I was really like pouring through contemporary fiction looking for that, since I was not getting good advice from the humans around me.
Mm-mm.
For a variety of reasons, these were not translatable to my life. I was also, for the record, reading Babysitter's Club a lot for also tips and tricks about friendships and what to do when you hit bumpy parts.
Saddle Club for me.
Yes.
Oh, yes. Also a good one.
Good stuff. And so that's what I mean of like, even children are reading it, even if, yes, the adults labeled as middle grade, within children still essentially subdivide middle grade by genre. So there's contemporary, there's science fiction, there's horror. They do the same thing that adults do. But when they're reading contemporary, they're getting a lot of the same things out of it that we got out of it, that a lot of adults get out of it. It is so lovely to be able to read a story and sort of live that character's life for a little bit, when it's a kind of life you've been curious about. I remember, this was so long ago now, it's probably been 20 years since I read this book, so I don't remember the title, but there was a book that the descriptor mentioned a bodega cat and the bodega the cat lived at. And I had kind of heard about bodega cats at that point, that like in New York City, they call their convenience stores or their corner stores bodegas, and that they all have cats in order to, partly deal with mice and so on, but also just because it's why not? It's cat.
Actually,
that was cool.
Yeah, that kind of brings a point to mind. It allows you to kind of explore other cultures and see how things are in a different perspective, in a different place, with different, things.
Yeah, and I loved it. That was why I read that book. Was I was curious, what was life working like? What was life like working at a bodega, where there's drama and there's the neighborhood people and everything. And I was like, yeah, I want to experience that. Let me read this book and like kind of get a little taste of this life, because I did not see anytime soon that I would get to move to a big city where, and I probably wasn't expecting to work at a convenience store where there's a cat that lives at the store, and that is not taken home every day or something.
Although we now see all these, photos and stuff of bodega cats. I mean, it's now been an SNL, script, a musical section.
Yes, I do love those. Oh, I love the musicals they did. But yeah, the bodega cat one. So that is, I think, a real selling point for contemporary fiction.
Also, real quick, I want to get to Spence's
About basic bees.
Yeah, from her hot take from her sick bed.
Yes,
I mean,
we
that's
hope you feel
her.
better soon, sweetie.
And it's like she's always considered, contemporary fiction as the basic bee stuff. And to which I say, one of the things I've been surprised at is how much, especially in this past decade, really almost 15 plus years, how much basic, average, normal has become a derogatory term, versus basic means it's something we all have.
Yeah, it's like the starter kit. It's called life.
Of like, oh, you have basic DNA. Oh, you mean like the 99.9% we all share that's identical?
Mm-hmm.
What's so bad about that? It helps make me human. It does talk about the basic problems in life, but it also
Yeah.
shows you different ways of resolving those same problems, and kind of experience it before it happens to you. So maybe you're better prepared. You can feel like you can go through life a little bit easier, not worried about these other problems, because you've read in books how and seen in movies how it can be tackled.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's many a contemporary novel I've read that had sexual assault in it, and how the character dealt with it, how other characters that interacted with her or suggested she deal with it, things I had not considered at that point. And I got lots of really good advice from these novels about even how to be a good friend if, God forbid, one of my friends has a terrible life experience, such as that, of how to be supportive. Or conversely, some of these novels were like, oh, this is not a good way to be supportive. And of course, that would be discussed in the novel. But at least then I knew, don't talk that way. And, how to then kindly talk to other people in real life who are talking in that destructive manner. I really found it helpful. Also, I found it very thought-provoking, and it was a wonderful way for me to discuss with my friends, oh, I was reading this book, this novel, and this happened to one of the characters, and then one of the other characters said this. What do you think about that? And hear what my friends thought, and then we could have a conversation where nobody has to talk. It has to worry about what they're saying about a real person. We can just essentially talk about this concept and have thoughtful, thought-provoking conversations that way about it, without having to worry about anybody misinterpreting it later, going, oh, I heard you were talking bad about me. Like, literally we were not, but also, yes, we were talking about you. That is not an issue when we're talking about fictional people. It's fantastic. So I found it really useful. And from what I gather, when I was a public librarian, a lot of people who read contemporary fiction are reading it for very similar reasons. They're interested on relationship-driven or relationship-focused storylines. They're also interested on very difficult situations and how characters dealt with it, because for whatever the reason, they really, as a human, the patrons, the readers, have no idea how to deal with that problem. So they're like, yeah, I need to essentially gather data without it being a real life situation where you definitely don't want to mess it up.
I mean, that's really what made Judy Blume so big for school kids, was she was one of the first writers to really tackle these everyday problems, kids faced, and showed how to resolve these, how to handle them.
And also that she wasn't, putting a real sparkle and lollipops kind of spin on it, that these were real problems by real people, and some of them were making real mistakes, and therefore there were real consequences. And it was, again, something then as a reader to talk about with your friends, and even talk about with people's parents about.
But also at the same time, even when you made mistakes, life was not over from that point. I mean, especially what was it? Maggie B. What was Judy Blume's big character?
Oh, you mean like the "Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret"?
Yeah, but didn't she also do one about a Christmas pageant or something?
No, I think you're thinking of Beezus, and
you're right.
Is a different writer. And you're thinking, was it Junie B? There's several of these middle grade.
I'm thinking of Junie B.
And I also it's Judy Blume is not the one who wrote that.
Yeah, but those have also showing that just because you make big mistakes does not mean your life is over. How do you recover from these great embarrassments or these great mistakes that you harm others? Versus, a lot of fiction likes to just say, oh, well, it's over from that point. That character's gone from society, goodbye. Versus contemporary fiction often keeps, shows how does life continue.
What were you saying, Amy?
I was just saying it gives you a toolkit, more things that you know to work with and social tools.
Aside,
yes,
you're not the only one.
I see the chat is talking about the 10 and a half hour.
Yeah,
like they would like to know.
It was fine. I think y'all don't realize what a champion chatter I am. I'm just lying. It's nice to be able to sit while doing it. I used to be an elementary school teacher. That's all we do all day is talk. And we don't normally script the whole thing. So mostly we're unscripted. And children really do say the darndest things, y'all. So it's constantly improving. So,
yeah. Props to you.
It was fun.
Impressive.
We had lots of conversation. We talked all sorts of things. We did, didn't we? We talked about volcanoes. We talked about creativity, all sorts of creativity. You name it, we talked about it.
You bounce a lot of story ideas off each other.
A lot. Yes, you're right. We did bounce a lot of stories. We just, it was 10 and a half hours of zeitgeist, of the spirit of the moment. It was lovely.
Yeah, it was great. I didn't stay for as long, but for what I did stay for, it was really good.
You were there for quite a while, if I recall.
Yeah, for most of it, I think about 6 or something hours of it. Yes. But no, it was good
you
fun.
Started going loopy. It was like time for you to sleep.
Yeah. If I start going quiet and pull away.
I mean, I am an extrovert, so
that does help.
I get energy from chatting with people. So versus I know introverts, they just the gas tank does not get refilled while they are with people. Versus for me, the gas tank is always being refilled, even if maybe it's not being refilled quite as fast as it's depleting. It's almost even. So I still had energy after the chat to chat with Maggie for like another hour backstage, maybe longer. Carrie might remember. Wow. Let's see. I guess it was actually 2 hours. Yeah, because I got off with Carrie and Maggie a little after midnight, and then I went and made dinner, and then I ate and watched a little Doctor Who, and I fell asleep to Doctor Who. And then I had my alarm set to be up. My first alarm went off at 6:30 in the morning, but I was already awake by that point, so I could be sure to be on time to Chandra's stream at 8:30 my time. And I was, and then I wrote 599 words on Chandra's stream. So
on fire.
Yeah, because again, I'm an extrovert. I really do get energized from being around people who are kind and supportive. If we were talking about rude or toxic people, that I would not. I used to think I was introverted, actually, and it turned out no, it was just the quality of people I was around was the problem. But when I am around warm, wonderful people, my energy does not flag. So I'm very blessed that way. So I think it's just different minds have to take different strategies to handle something like. Because to me, the World Wide Readathon is like a convention, but it's like an online convention. But it still has a bit of that intensity that the sci-fi fantasy conventions in the Deep South have. Because sci-fi fantasy conventions in the Deep South tend to be in hotels, and they are standalone. Like, pretty much a convention takes over the whole hotel. Everybody is staying at that one hotel. All the panels are there at the hotel, in the talking convention rooms, so on. And there's a vendor room that is enormous for everyone to do all their shopping. Usually they would pick a hotel that is surrounded by restaurants that people like to go to. So you could just walk and then you walk back because they're literally within a block. Like there's usually at least 8 or 10 restaurants at these things. And now there's delivery. So nobody leaves the hotel all weekend and you're constantly with people. And then Saturday night at these hotel conventions, Saturday night is the party night. There's a literal floor of the hotel devoted to parties where every single room is hosting a party, and it is open door for the most part, unless they're carding people for age reasons. But like pretty much everyone's allowed to go to every party. Nobody has to wait for an invitation. You just walk in.
Wow. It's a hell of a sleepover.
It is. But
Oh my
again,
God.
it is intense. It's super fun, but it is intense.
Mhm.
And I just look at the Worldwide Ride-a-thon as that sort of convention atmosphere. So I try to manage my energy accordingly and everything. Let's see. Michael said somewhere in the world.
That comment.
Got engaged, got married.
I don't know for sure about the stream, but I can say at a convention, I know it happened at least once.
Yes.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, I want to try out one of these hotel conventions.
I would love for you to come to one, Amy. I have made so many wonderful friends. I have met so many amazing people, and that's also where you get to hobnob with other writers. Yes. And often, B and C list and D list, like sci-fi fantasy stars, like because they'll pay for actors to come and producers and stuff, and you get to just party with everybody, and it is wild.
Yeah, we've got cons here.
Show up at anything.
We've got cons here, but like it's not as intense because you don't all stay in the location. Usually people will go off. It's usually at a convention building. And then also we're a lot more limited by the guests, and they don't just turn up because it's not as easy because they've got to go for a whole nother different continent. And so it sounds like a lot more wild where you guys are.
It's a really warm atmosphere. So there are certain writers, producers, actors who really have conventions that they're like, you just have to pay my hotel and like my food and I'll come. Like there's a lot of really lovely people who pretty much come just to hang out. And it's wonderful. It's how I've gotten to know so many writers from before I ever thought I would write. When you get to party with everybody you've seen during the convention and you all really bond it, you become friends, actual friends who look forward to seeing each other every time they run into each other at these different conventions. That's why I love sci-fi fantasy hotel conventions in the South. I'm told that elsewhere, even in the US, the sci-fi fantasy conventions are not the same. That the South, because science fiction and fantasy for so long has been viewed in a negative light due to the ultra-religious conservatism in the South. And that is why, if anything, it's even more warm and inviting and comforting when you go to these conventions, because these are essentially like refugees of their own towns. These are people who've come to finally get to hang out with other people who too want to gush about all their fandoms and fan fiction. It is wonderful.
Sounds so good.
Hello, Dolores. Dolores says, I live in Southern Arizona, and in our second biggest city, they have a big festival called the Festival of Books that takes over the whole university campus pretty much. That is awesome. That is fantastic.
That's so cool. And I may or may not have a cosplay in the works at the moment too. So haven't done that in a while.
I love it. And a lot of people dress up for these conventions and everybody loves the costumes. I mean, it is a wonderful way to meet people. So
yeah, it's like I remember about 18 years ago now, they got what's his name who plays Q to show up.
Yeah.
John
and they were
something?
John Delancey, and they're like, we'll never be able to pay his rates. They're like, well, just contact his agent, see what he says. And he was just and the agents talked to John, and his response was, well, how big is this thing? And they're like, it maxes out at like 1,000. It's not a big convention. We just and he's like, and just tell him pay for room, board, and meals, and I'll be there. And so he was at this tiny little convention
and hung out for most of the weekend.
That's so cool.
So there is this really warm atmosphere there's not gatekeeping. And it's not where you're waiting in line to have your picture taken with people, because the truth is you could literally just stop them in the hallway and go, hey, can I get my picture real quick? It's it's more of like, and you're going to go fetch other people. Oh, so Tracy Hickman's table has opened up. Let me go get so and so. They've been wanting to meet you all weekend. And it's just like, sure, they'll stay, they'll meet you over lunch, whatever. It's a very different.
Wow.
I think if my introduction to science fiction and fantasy conventions had been more like some of these bigger ones where
like WizardCon,
where you pay to even just have a picture and a signature, an autograph.
That's what ours is like.
Then I don't think I would have really been into it. But because it was truly a community feel, it was like, oh, wait, yes, these are my geeks. Oh, yes, I am here now. I am among my people. They are accepting of all my oddities. It's fantastic. And I mean, year to year, I'd run into people and, like get updated about their life. People would have books for me that they'd been saving for 2 years because they missed me at the last convention. Is, like real friends, even though it's friends you only see maybe once or twice a year at best. So yeah, that I do highly recommend these kind of hotel conventions. They are wonderful. Pretty much I've learned the hard way of like, now I'm not going to those other type of conventions.
Ours seems like it's a little bit in the middle because it's still a lot smaller, which is why we do have some really big guests come, but not often and very few, because they don't get swamped as much as they might in America. But we still have the ticketing on the photos and everything like that. So it's not totally close knit because we get, I think when it was running, I think it was like around 20,000 would come because we'd have people interstate, and it's different in the other states as well. But yeah, it's still a little bit intimate, but also not really.
Yeah, I think most of the science fiction fantasy conventions in the Deep South, like, they're like, what, 400 to 1,000 at best for attendance for the entire weekend, for the entire Friday,
that's
Saturday,
good
Sunday.
though, because it makes it so much more intimate.
Also, a lot of these people come religiously. Like, they come every single year for 20 years. They bring, they met people there, they married them, they had babies, they then ended up in a polycule, all the things. And and their children were like, oh, this is it. So that is, when you have that kind of stability, it's a very different, it's pretty much like having a family reunion far more, but a family reunion of fandom. So it's what I hope for everyone who has fandom, of to get to experience that kind of community like I was introduced to. I think it is so warm and supportive and encouraging that I feel bad for people who are like, no, I've only ever waited in line for hours to meet someone for 3 seconds and then move on, and I pay $25 for the privilege, and I'm like, I am so cheap.
Yeah.
But also, you haven't lived till John Barrowman's gotten drunk in your hotel party room, and his friends have had to come pull him out because he's got a panel at 9 in the morning in your party.
See, this is why I volunteer, because I can get a little bit backstage. It doesn't go totally backstage, but you get a little bit more chat. And because you're like official or whatever, you can chat a little bit, but it's still not quite as wild as that, which sounds amazing.
I still remember at a local one to here that we know the person who's been running it for like 20 years now. How long is Hub? How long?
40 years is what you mean. You have no idea how time.
And like 5 years ago, I remember going, and what was it? Stranger Things had just come out, and somehow he booked like 2 of the kids.
Yeah.
And they had the most confused looks on their faces.
Like, what am I doing in South Mississippi?
What is this, and what am I doing here? This is not what I was expecting for a convention.
We were like, how did you even get these kids? And he was like, you would not believe how cheap it was.
Oh like,
they need to get new managers, but I'm not going to tell them till the end of the convention that they need to get new management.
Wow.
That is what he said. I'm like, it was $400 per, but I got a deal to get both, was only $675. And I'm like, that's not even, did you pay, do you also have to pay hotel and food and everything? He's like, no, that's the thing. That was just a straight price. I'm going to tell them as I escort them to the airport that they needed to get new management. That is what he told us. And I was like, yep, okay. So
there was no tickets to go to talk
him.
with them or anything. I mean, it was still, I think, like $20 whatever to sign autographs and stuff. But like to actually visit and chat.
Sat down at the table next to them when no one was in line and was like, so what's acting for Netflix like?
Yeah.
Like, we just got to chat.
But I will never forget the looks on their faces of just, what am I doing here? What did I sign up for in Mississippi? How did I end up here? Like they were having some weird existential going on.
Yeah, I think they were taking him on a tour to see all the swans in town.
Wow.
But they ended up having a good time. It was just it was so different than the rest of the conventions they'd ever been to.
They were like, it's weird that there's not really any security, but also no one's bothering us. And I'm like, who would be bothering you? If anyone's bothering you, let us know. And they're like, you're literally the 8th person in the last day to tell me. If anyone ever bothers you, let me know, and I will personally go to their house and tell their mother. Like, and we're not talking about if a child is bothering. We're like, no, if a grown man is bothering you, I will go talk to their mother. And she gonna like remove their name from their lease on their car.
So they did show up 2 years later as like on a deal of like, we'll show, because it's like, this is fun. It was different.
They did show up, Tom. I asked. They paid regular tickets for it. They didn't tell anybody. They paid for themselves, and they were like, oh, we were just going to pay for our own passes for the weekend. I'm like, what did you do, Tim? Tim's like, I gave it to him for free. What was I going to do, Lloyd? Yes, they came and they were ready to pay their own money to just hang out.
Oh my gosh.
They were so cute.
Because I said, like, you don't really need security much here. And if anyone does look like they're bothering, several people will swarm from several different social groups. It's really interesting when the Mandalorians all show up in armor to escort someone out. As sort of and they battle for who's got rights to escort with the stormtroopers.
Oh, that's so great.
Groups are there of like, no, we're doing this security hour.
The drama of the stormtroopers versus the Mandalorians, y'all.
Oh my god!
Before the Mandalorian came out, by the way.
Yeah, before the Mandalorian came out, and they were already They had to set up a schedule for who was in charge of security because they were not having a transfer of power easily.
Yes, but they take serious about the hospitality here of, no, you don't harass people. You don't make people uncomfortable.
I want to go so bad.
I totally want you to come and hang out with people.
I'm like going to start planning an itinerary for when I go over there. It's going to be around the date of the con, and then we're going to pop over to New Orleans, and I'm going to try out these bagels and pies, and then it's just like, we're going to do all the things.
Do all the things. Yes, it's going to be wonderful.
Oh, it's so good.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was just thinking, hey, it's almost about time for a bio break. I should probably start queuing up a timer. But does anyone have any questions yet about contemporary fiction, or have anything that they want to talk about for sure in the next hour, where we will talk about some of the problematic issues as well as the shortcomings of the genre? Yeah, Dolores says, OMG, yes. This is why I always wanted to go to our local Comic-Con, but my parents would not let us. And then went to the book festival when I was in high school. Yes. Dolores, one day, when it's safe to be among humans again.
When it's safe to be among crowds.
Yes.
One day.
Yeah, because we've got a con that's coming up. I think it's December. And I'm like, I don't know. I think I might miss this one.
Yeah, it's still tough.
Yeah, especially since they're opening up the borders and canceling quarantine. So,
What's so wrong?
Yeah, I know. It's like, maybe not.
Maybe not yet.
But to actually kind of bring it back to what we were talking about of contemporary fiction, of the conventions we're going to is still actually slice of life. It still is about how do you develop these friendships with people? Like, if you just wrote a story about going to a convention, that would very much be, even though you're dealing with fandom stuff, just contemporary.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's, the life now. And how do you, when you are a part of a small fandom in an area that doesn't really, is not interested in that fandom, how you have to travel to find your groups.
Yes. Michael's convinced that, Tom, you and I can talk intelligently on any topic on the planet Earth. You all should just title the next stream Go.
Yeah, agreed.
Thank you. Tom, it's almost break time. Me taking a breath. What doesn't kill you just makes you stronger. Michael.
Oh, dear.
Good stuff. So yeah, like there's been a couple little short films made about sci-fi fantasy convention life, and those are contemporary. Even though it's talking about people who love science fiction and fantasy and various fandoms, because essentially it is slice of life. It's about real people that, are real examples of people living their lives and, what that means. So that is part of contemporary.
Yeah, because I actually Googled contemporary movies and Terminator 2 and The Matrix popped up. So,
I mean,
I think it's a subgenre, but not entirely just contemporary.
I mean, like, it definitely does have a contemporary aspect to the second and third movies in particular.
It's not the only thing, though.
And I guess actually even the part where Neo is in the Matrix and he's living a contemporary lifestyle.
That is true.
So I guess all three really. They really do delve into what is it like living in this time period. And since we don't know what time period the movie actually takes place in, it does have a contemporary feel. You are right.
Sure.
Yeah, Megan asks, why is contemporary so maligned as a genre? There is a lot to unpack there.
We'll be going over some of that next hour.
Yeah, so how about we take a break? May I make a recommendation that now would be a wonderful time to, I don't know, make sure you have something to drink. Squish, 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 squish. And perhaps a snack. Maybe take a stand, walk around a little, perhaps listen to your bladder if that is necessary.
Get more drinking.
Yes, refill the drinks. And when we come back, we will talk about the problematic issues and shortcomings of contemporary fiction, as well as your questions about contemporary writing. So, see you in a few. Thank you, Tom. Tom made popcorn.
Can I have some?
It smells better than movie theater because it's got brown butter in it.
Nice.
I wish I could send it to you.
I wish I could have it. I'm in the car outside my daughter's doctor's office, so.
Well, I'm really glad that you were able to join us in any capacity. And Michael says, "Hi, Mama Maggie."
Hi, Michael. Hello, lovelies.
So, Maggie, here we are at the top of the second hour. Your favorite section. I'm teasing. Where, yes, we talk about acknowledging problematic issues and genre shortcomings, as well as Megan has already put in a question. We're both clicking on the same things. Why is contemporary so maligned as a genre? Oh, and Diana is also saying, "Hi, Maggie."
Hi, Diane.
So, does anybody want to get started? I mean, I'll start if you don't want to.
Well, contemporary has really changed as a genre over the past 20 or 30 years, 40 years. It in the 90s, books like Eat, Pray, Love, The Joy Luck Club, things like that, that was considered contemporary genre. And then Four Weddings and a Funeral and Bridget Jones's Diary came out, and there was this kind of shift into where it was kind of becoming more, oh, well, this is chick lit and this is comedy and stuff. And then contemporary kind of split into this thing where either it's very fluffy, light, the Instagram of fiction, you know,
Inspirational.
all the pretty places, all the pretty food, all the pretty people. And then, you know, with where contemporary used to talk about like real social issues and real things, that began being shifted into what's called urban fiction. And so even though
if it doesn't take place in the
even
city,
if it doesn't take place in a city, if it's modern but it's not fluffy and light and pretty, it's considered urban. And it's treated that way.
And it's not aspirational.
No.
What would you say about The Breakfast Club? Because I'd say that's probably in that basket.
Yeah, I would definitely
a little bit. Yeah,
like it's very contemporary at the time that movie came out.
Then it was contemporary. Now it would be considered urban. Because, you know, it'd be YA or NA because of the age of the characters in it, and that because they were like rebelling against, you know, authority, it would have comedic aspects, but you know, then it's also talking on the neglected child, the abandoned child, the
underage
mental
drinking. There was underage drinking and drug use discussed.
And you know, the struggles of the kids, that would shift it back more toward urban dark. Because yes, it was the pretty people, but their stories weren't pretty.
I feel like whenever you get a genre or a group stereotyped and maligned, it's often because it becomes cookie cutter. And you see people not wanting to expand the genre.
That's another thing that's another thing that happens in contemporary is a popular contemporary book will come out, and all of a sudden everyone is writing their own versions of it. And it's that's how like stories become tropes. That's how you get tropes that then become cliches. The book, what is the name of it? Can't think of it now. Probably Spence. Probably.
Mhm.
The dying of cancer. That was all the thing, like 2 years ago.
The Fault in Our Stars?
Yes. That years ago would have been considered contemporary fiction.
True.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But because of the sadness and the death and the serious overtones and the social implications, it's considered urban YA. It's a dark fiction because people die.
Mm.
So
Well,
now we have to ask ourselves, is contemporary fiction was social commentary. Like some of the great plays that we all studied, like The Glass Menagerie,
Mhm.
was contemporary fiction when it came out
Mm-hmm.
because it was social commentary, fictionalized. It was fiction as a coping mechanism for looking at society's problems and looking for things to go on. And modern contemporary is not that way anymore. And we have to ask ourselves, what happened to the genre?
I think it's that all right, so this is definitely all right, how to say this does not get, YouTube angry at us. There are not as many unwanted pregnancies as there used to be. So there are not as many unwanted children. And so every child is now more precious. And with that comes, parental supervision, and then we must protect these kids from anything that would upset them or in any way harm them, not realizing no, you need to accustom them to the difficulties of life while you can help them understand it, versus the when they turn 18 or 21, it does not magically make their brain able to handle all these problems.
Mm-hmm.
But we've gotten this overprotective culture of, because nowadays a movie will become R-rated in America simply because it deals with underage kids talking about drinking or smoking.
Mhm.
Like, just that is an R rating in America now. Even if it shows, the problems and difficulties with underage drinking, it's still, if it involves that, no, that's not safe for kids to watch. That's R. And so it's that, I hate to admit that there's a certain amount of, there's overprotectiveness going on, and it's leaking into these of as you see, like you had those discussions, over the write-a-thon about what's appropriate for kids of certain ages. And to be honest, everyone on here is a lot more, I want my kids to read difficult subjects.
Mhm.
But where I can help them understand it far more than most parents now in the general populace
Mm-hmm.
are, I don't want them to even know those subjects exist.
The thing is like difficult stuff can happen and does happen out in the real world. And so if you really want to protect your kid, you need to actually equip them with how to deal with that rather than completely. Yeah.
Well,
preventing them from knowing bad things even exist or can happen, let alone to even other young people or even adults, does not prepare people for living in the real world.
No.
And so they get blindsided when they are out there and they're like, wait, hold up. You mean everyone in the world is not automatically my friend and that I am not necessarily safe around authority figures? And all these, it's like smothering them and cushioning them from having knowledge of the real world is not helping anyone in the long term. But I've heard many parents in like the last 10 years discuss a desire to prevent their child from knowing about the downside of the real world. Quote, they want to help their child remain, innocent and whimsical. Now, some of y'all may be familiar with my writing, and it is all whimsy all the time. Even the dark stuff gets whimsical, which is apparently a head trip for many a reader. But I have not really ever been fully protected from the real world, and yet I am very whimsical all the time in real life. It's just part of who I am. So that is not going to ruin.
Charlie's just there dealing with YouTube.
They're going through the stages of like low-level celebrity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're processing their grief. So,
well, if you look at contemporary fiction just over the last century, the shift in toward the lighter, fluffier really did not happen until 9/11.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because before then, we were still talking about people struggling with their interpersonal relationships, people struggling with their personal demons, people trying to find ways to overcome the thing that knocked them down. And sometimes they got knocked down again.
How about how about the breakout hits? I can't remember the actual song's title, but you remember the song about Luca? My name is Luca.
Yeah.
I live on the second floor, about child abuse. Or was it Aerosmith with Janie's Got a Gun?
Yeah.
These were contemporary songs.
What is the band? Jamie spoke in class today. Jeremy spoke in class today.
Yes, Jeremy. Yeah.
And that was reaction to Columbine. A lot of that. I was in Colorado when we were living here when Columbine happened, and it was the first really mass. I mean, there have been school shootings before. There have been school shootings since the 1930s. Back that far, we've been having.
I mean, there's been songs about it too for that long as well.
Yeah.
I mean, what was the song who wrote "I Hate Mondays"?
And then you go and you start looking for it, but Columbine was really the one that was first mass blown up. And then, like, 2 years later, we were all watching the World Trade Center's towers fall onto Manhattan. And suddenly people stopped wanting to deal with the difficult part of reality. And it went divergent in two ways. After then, the horror genre went through the roof.
Yes, it did.
Really, horror genre went through the roof. Fantasy and sci-fi escapism became the thing. And contemporary fiction, because it could no longer survive in this we don't want to hear anything negative bubble, it just started drifting into something that's the only thing that you can compare it with that is like a genre classification was it became urban cozies.
Yeah.
And you've heard my how contemporary fiction has become Instagram now because they only want to show the pretty people and they only, and there's a little bit of drama, but it's so contrived that if it happened in real life, somebody'd be slapping somebody else, and then they would recategorize it as urban.
Versus, Gloria made sure I watched. When was it? Last Christmas?
Oh, that romantic one that wasn't really romantic.
Yeah, what's the one starring? What's her name from Game of Thrones?
Yeah, it was Last Christmas.
Of where they make it look like a Hallmark movie.
It's a Hallmark romance, but was supposedly what it is, and I'm like, this is.
And then the last 15 minutes they pull it all out.
And it's like, surprise, we told you it was a Christmas romance. We lied. Like,
there was a few years ago, there was, who was it? Charlize Theron was in this movie, September.
You're talking about
where she was terminally ill, and every month.
November, yes.
Yeah, she would pick up
20 years ago, Maggie. I just looked it up. It came out in 2001. We are dating ourselves right now.
But that movie I thought that was a great movie, and that movie crashed and burned in the box office.
Yes.
And it was because people were like, oh, la, 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 I don't want to deal with this. And then, like, Fault in Our Stars just came out. It's the most 20-year gap between almost identical storylines. And everyone was like, oh, it's so sad. It's so sad. But even in, I read the book and there wasn't the fluffiness in the theater was, the end was like, yeah. Please don't ever do a show on movies that don't follow books.
There's too many, Maggie.
It'll be a 48-hour rant. But we're starting to get back to where it's like, okay, a little bit to have these, but that's not really contemporary, that's urban.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, I don't know if the genre is ever going to recover and be able to stand back up.
Well, I suspect what contemporary is it really depends on what is selling. And that, so like there is this greater umbrella of what is actually, quote, contemporary. And then there's what gets labeled as contemporary. That goalpost just shifts depending on, you know, a 5-year, 10-year cycle. Hello, Heather. Depending on that, it's whatever people are buying. That's what's actually getting labeled as contemporary, depending on what readers actually want in that genre. You know, so when they're wanting light, fluffy, cozy stuff versus when they want gritty, you know, bare bones, this is, you know, terrible situations, social situations, how do you get out of it, kind of. It just depends on the decade. What is it readers want? But then everything else gets pushed to all sorts of other places. And we really get to see there's sexism and racism at play about where they then get pushed, since they're not allowed to be in the contemporary classification.
I mean, technically, contemporary is supposed to be, you read the book and you can literally imagine yourself with these people as your neighbors. You can imagine meeting these people on the street. That's what contemporary is supposed to be. It's supposed to make you look at the world around you and think, I don't really agree with that, or I completely, you know, it's contemporary is supposed to make you think, it's supposed to make you look around it, and you're supposed to be able to imagine these characters as your neighbors.
Well, also, like another thing that gets pushed out of contemporary but technically belonged is a lot of military fiction. A lot of modern military fiction, particularly post 9/11, was about terrorism and looking for terrorists and so on. And it got pushed out, like all that Jack Ryan stuff was pushed out.
Action adventure.
They literally resurrected this genre just for that, because they refused to let it stay in contemporary, even though that is where the books in the 90s that were military fiction were being put.
Well, and a lot of LGBTQA stories.
Yes.
Oh, you can't have that in contemporary. You know, it is immediately, that is the whole reason they established that as a completely separate genre.
Yes.
Is to make sure that it did not get into the traditional genres.
Mm-hmm.
I think something else
and own voices is unfortunately
it is another way to push out minority voices.
Is another way to put people who are minority writers, and you know, I'm Native American, but my family was not on the reservations. We escaped that particular hell, and we still held some of our traditions, but mostly we live mainstream American culture.
Right.
And but because I'm a Native American writer, it's like, you know, are your books own voices? Well, no, because I would not write something like Reservation Dogs, because that isn't not in my world experience.
Right. You did not grow up on a reservation. How would
And,
you don't live on a reservation?
and
That's
it's
not
like,
your context.
and I have friends who are of other races, and they're writing contemporary fiction, and they're like, or children's fiction or fantasy, and they're like, oh, it's own voices, and they're like, no, it's my ethnic background has nothing to do with my fiction. But it's another way to segment out not your basic male white writer.
Or even female writer.
Female writer, yeah. And it's
because a lot of male authors are pushed out of contemporary, even though they are writing more what would at the time be regular old, what would fit in contemporary, and they're being pushed out because they're male writers and they're not writing under a pseudonym or just using their initials to obscure their gender.
But how do we fix this? How do we edge contemporary writing back into being more of a social commentary, more of a, this is contemporary, this is what is going on in our time, fictionalized? Or do you think that the chance to do that bridge has been burned?
Well, when I was a teenager, I was living in North Mississippi, and my mother used to call it, it's, what was it? She used to say it's 1950s, but with computers.
Yes.
Which is actually a pretty good description of North Mississippi in the 90s. And so that meant that all the books available to me were also from the 50s and 60s, quite honestly. One of the books I got a hold of was Diary of a Mad Housewife, which was labeled as contemporary. And
then it would be.
I mean, could there be now? It would be so contemporary, because to me, like, a miserable housewife struggling with her husband, her children, and society, and her place in it, and she's trying to, and not effectively she's not effectively dealing with it. I was really fascinated by it as a teenager reading this. But what happened, I was told, was the mood in the 60s. It was about these, difficult, introspective type of stories. That was the, bread and butter of contemporary. This is what I was told when I was young. That was the bread and butter of contemporary at the time, and the whole, what was it? What was that movie everybody always fucking quotes? Where the girl dies, and it's,
My Girl?
No, it's from the 70s. This isn't a love story, or this is a love story about a girl who dies. Remember that? You know what I'm talking about? Nobody.
But there is Love Story, which is really
That's
not
the one.
a love story.
That's the one. Love Story. Love Story, which is not a love story, was a contemporary fiction novel when it came out. And because it was seen as gritty and bare bones, and it did not romanticize cancer or death. But apparently by the mid-70s, that changed, that contemporary setting, to these, what was it? Divorce American style. So we went and we just kept changing it. So I think that to some degree, the contemporary changes with the times.
Well, it does, but I think Eva had a point about it changes with marketing. And it's, unfortunately, I think that it is the genre that has the most fluid definition.
Yeah.
Because if you have science fiction, you have to have this, 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 and this. If you have fantasy, you have to have this, 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 and this. If you have romance, well, all the different kinds of romance. You have very specific parameters. The only parameter you have for contemporary fiction is set in modern times.
Yeah. I think something else that
it drifts.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the things I was thinking about that some scientists did a study of about music, but I think it holds with all media consumption. Was they looked at this thought people you always have about what kind of music do people listen to? Do they listen to music to change their mood or to go with their mood? And so they looked at what is the general sentiment, the emotional index of the US at a given time, and then what was the pop music at the time. And what they found was people do not listen to happy music to make them feel happy. They listen to happy music because they're already happy. They listen to sad music because they're already sad, and they want to go with those emotions and ride them out. And I think contemporary fiction suffers from this the most, in that it is for whatever is the current zeitgeist moods and what people want to deal with at the time. I mean, the bread and butter to me of contemporary fiction in the 90s was alcohol addiction. You could not pick up a contemporary story. Yes.
Bad breakups, meaningless sex, and some kind of addiction.
Yep.
Yes. Of like, that was just the bread and butter of these stories because that was the now. That was what people were dealing with. That's what people were trying to get away from, but everyone was dealing with. So that was the contemporary of the time. And what we're seeing is this conflict now where publication has better concept of the psychology of how to try to sort of manipulate views of things. And so they're trying to steer contemporary fiction towards what they have marketable and ready for consumption because contemporary changes so fast. And so we're now seeing where indie authors' concept of contemporary fiction is just drastically changing from where mainstream trade publishing concept of contemporary fiction is. And it's hard to really be sure.
Well, just from my experience writing and publishing, when I look at the way TradPub is handling the querying and who they pick up and who they don't pick up, and yeah, they're doing some kind of really underhanded things right now. But right now, it's indie publishing has opened like the floodgates. And no matter how hard trad publishing is trying, they are not going to be able to close that gate. They are not going to be able to stuff that genie back in the box. And when you have all of the different indie publishing platforms, not just e-platforms, but actual go out, get hard copies, prints of your books, groups that offer distribution networks with things. And I'm not talking the vanity presses. Vanity Press is one of the most predatory things in publishing. And that is the nicest way that I can say it without us getting a strike from YouTube. But it's right now on Amazon, they've got 2 classifications you can put your books in. There is talk of offering a third because people are no longer genre specific. And that is part of the problem that contemporary fiction has, is because there is now so much overlap into other genres that, contemporary romance, contemporary adventure, contemporary mystery, true crime fiction could be considered contemporary.
Oh, we're starting to hit the point where cyberpunk is starting to become contemporary.
Yes.
Yes, I was thinking that.
And stuff like, yeah.
Of course.
And like medical dramas and stuff like that. The problem is, it's to try to stop this. Trad publishers are trying to stuff all this stuff into, oh no, that's not contemporary. That's urban. No, that's not contemporary. That's own voices. That's not contemporary. That's LGBTQA. That's not contemporary. That's military fiction. That's some, and literally it's contemporary fiction is anything that's today or near future adjacent, near past adjacent. You are living adjacent to contemporary fiction.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not all fluffy and light. And the world is, you know, it's not a good place to live in, and bad things happen and good things happen, and some overcome and some succumb.
I mean,
And
for our age group, Bridget Jones's Diary, like that was contemporary fiction at the time.
Yeah, that was marketed as contemporary.
And
I listened to
Joy
those
Luck Club.
audiobooks. Yes. Oh, cried so much. So relatable to my emotionally withholding mother. I was like, other cultures deal with this as well. I am not alone, because around here, everybody would rather walk on their own lips than ever say anything bad about their mother. And I just was like, I guess it's just me with a shitty mom.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, they helped me not feel as alone. But yeah, I didn't normally go into contemporary fiction to find books at the time because, again, it didn't have what I was necessarily looking for. Because I couldn't relate to a lot of it. I was looking for the gritty things like Diary of a Mad Housewife. Even though I wasn't married, I was still a teenager, but I was working 60 to 80 hours a week, babysitting, paying the rent, publishing a novel or a cookbook with my mother, doing all these other things. And I was looking for anyone to be talking about the issues I was experiencing of, like, I feel like I'm no more valuable than a machine, and that nobody cares about what I actually think or what's going on in my head. Nobody has an interest in my thoughts about any subject. And here we're old contemporary fiction talking about that, but not modern contemporary fiction. And I found it very concerning. Like, well, does that mean that I don't fit in anymore? And I mean, truly, I went through a lot of identity crisis as a late teen.
Somebody gave me a collection of 4 books from a very published author who writes. She writes it was contemporary fiction. She's writing modern times and stuff like that. And it's almost a romantic comedy, but it's never quite reaches the romance part. It's just these people living together in this Texas town, and please don't write about places you've never been to. Google Earth is there for a reason. Stop laughing, Tom. Stop laughing, Tom.
I was just thinking about that comment about Zane Grey and Google Earth.
Yes, yeah. He used the U.S. Postal Service maps to get all of his places. Literally. But
it worked.
But everyone but the thing is this is contemporary. It was New York Times bestseller list stuff, and every person in this, I don't want to sound elitist, but they were idiots. They needed an eye tattooed on their forehead, and they needed someone to follow them around to make sure that they functioned as an adult in the adult world, because the things they did were just like, I mean, 1 or 2 things. Yes, we have all tripped over a bucket of water when the roof was leaking. That happens. But we don't go down the hall like the Three Stooges and manage to kick or fall in every single bucket down the hall.
Thankful.
Even I am not that ungraceful. And you know, you don't say, oh yeah, let's start the pickup truck with a screwdriver because we've lost the key.
I have to admit, that's still one of the neatest tricks.
It is a neat trick if the tumblers in your starter are bad, but please don't do that.
Oh no, my dad could do it in the Plymouth. You actually did it from under the hood. You can just start the car even without keys or anything. Like, this does not. How does that even work?
Mm-hmm. Oh, you arc the starter? Yeah, you can do that. Older cars, you can do that. Newer cars, you can't. But older cars, you can arc the starter. And you're also going to give yourself a pretty good jolt if you're not careful.
How insulated is that screwdriver? But also though, that reminds me of about editing for flow. you put these in to try to seem more real, but if you don't then like actually read it through to see how it ends up of, yeah, do you have this occurring too many times? Did you go from just trying to make a point to make this feel more familiar to the, why is this happening every chapter? This is no longer trying to feel familiar and like this is the situation. You've now just made it a running gag without meaning to.
Well, and it's like modern contemporary fiction has become almost a mockumentary of modern culture. And like I'm sure Amy sees this. She's the tech in the room of how they mock cell phone usage now. And people who literally walk into traffic with their cell phone or their Bluetooth, and they, and we've all heard the meme joke about someone's in an elevator talking and somebody starts to answer them and then they realize they're on their Bluetooth. And the question is those of us who want to write contemporary literature as a reflection of the society around us, as a reflection of real people and real struggles and real day-to-day life, how do we avoid the urban dark label or own voices label? No, this is not about my family and my people, stop. Or any of the box labels that they have put off all around the contemporary genre to try to keep contemporary the Instagram of genres.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think, yeah, it becomes very blurred very quickly because it's like, well, when is it too extreme that it goes into a separate genre? And when does it stay within contemporary? Because things are different for different people, but you're not necessarily all robbing banks either. So, like there are still extreme differences that would probably keep it to a different genre rather than just contemporary. But
yeah, I find the label contemporary to be problematic itself. I really, as I said before, I really like the anime labels slice of life. For like slice of life tells you. Ironically, though, anime does not stick to what we would consider slice of life contemporary, because there's a really adorable anime about a witch who gets told to, I guess, move to the country. Like that's her placement. And
Piggy's delivery service?
No. Keep going,
something
I'll
magic. Yeah, Tom will come.
Okay.
But like, so she's out in the rural part of Japan being a witch, but it is slice of life and it is adorable. Because at first I was like, I mean, I don't hate magic, but like this is not what I was expecting. I really wanted to watch about Japanese life like that. That's what I really like it. Anytime they're frying up fish, I think it's fun to watch. And but it actually was slice of life of like what it's like when you're the resident witch in this rural country setting in Japan. It was super adorable. So like, again, their designation of what they consider slice of life, since it was about life in rural Japan, and she's just, she got regular problems like grocery shopping. How do you keep all the grocery bags on your broom when you're
Flying
Flying witch, that was the one. Like, these were real problems. And yes, I think she did lose a grocery bag at one point. So these are real problems. See you later, Heather. But I do think still designations like slice of life would be truer to what contemporary has become, so that, because contemporary is a loaded word, isn't it? It's saying this is validation for modern living. And if your life does not reflect this, somehow your life is now invalidated.
Yeah, it's kind of saying this is normal. This is what's considered okay.
This is what's average.
Right? And if you're not part of the mainstream, there's something off or outsider about you and your life experiences. And I think that's the loaded problem.
Because that's what contemporary was beforehand, where it was looking into the more unusual side of things, what was not typically like the normal or the mainstream as much.
versus
And-
like anyone could
yeah.
be slice of life. It's just a slice of their life. What's it like?
Yeah, exactly.
Living you know, like let's just like do. And what I like about slice of life is in anime, I haven't really read much manga at all, so but in anime it is truly about daily living. It's a lot
Mhm.
about daily in and out, breakfast, lunch, dinner, washing and cleaning, picking fruits and whatever you're doing. And I love that because I love to see how people live all over the world.
Yeah.
It is a way to do that. And it's just something that appeals to me. I know it doesn't appeal to everybody, but it's definitely part of that cottagecore vibe as well. Often these quiet little lives. I just had Tom watch 2 different videos today about this Azerbaijani family in Azerbaijan on a farm, and there's nobody talks in these videos. They're just cooking. They're just canning fruits and vegetables. The dogs are playing. The cats are teasing the dogs. It's just cottagey life. He was like, "Are they about to come out of that hobbit hole?" I was like, "That's a house." But yeah, I love that sort of slice of someone's life.
Mhm.
And that is definitely a part of contemporary readers do enjoy that, but not all contemporary readers are into that. Some people are wanting something harder and grittier. And yeah, at a certain point in my life, I definitely was part of that. I think some of the issues are just the names we use for these genres are problematic.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And they invalidate so many people and so many people's life experiences when, like, to me, like, contemporary just seems like, if you think about it, to me, it seems like such an aggressive term to use.
Mhm.
Of this is contemporary, and if your life does not reflect this, what is going on with you? Versus all lives are valid here. Not talking about all, like, all.
I think that's
Black Lives Matter.
that's the problem with it. I think that's the problem with it, is that contemporary should be like, these are the things going on. These are the things we need to look at and talk about, instead of, oh, fluffy, happy apple pie band camp things.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's definitely
it's-
a market for that, like, difficult, trying times kind of story.
and coming through trying times.
Absolutely.
Without it being classified as urban dark, without getting a rejection letter back that's saying you need to remove all the references to your character having therapy.
I mean, honestly, like, if that part of the fiction was called family drama, then I pretty much would have an idea of what I was getting into. Or something to that effect of, like, yeah, guess what? Because all families got their own stuff to deal with, so it's going to get gritty right here. Oh, what you got? I see it, Maggie. You can't hold it down.
I'm laughing at Charlie.
Oh, I know.
Mhm.
Charlie's throwing out balloons through the chat, Maggie.
I know.
Charlie's
I almost killed him in the pre-show, so yeah.
Yep.
But no, I think it's almost like there needs to be a realism genre.
Yes. Real life. Just call it that.
Real life.
It's just
real
life
because
it be real.
People have problems. People have neurotic moments. People have breakdowns. People do bad things to other people. And it's not horror. It's not urban dark. It's reality. And, it's...
So if Bridget Jones' Diary was about a Black or a Latina woman, would it still be contemporary? So to me, it would be. But I know that is not how traditional publishers would have genre classed it.
It would probably get classed into something else.
What's to say?
Well,
isn't that
where they're putting? Do you know where they're putting Hispanic fiction? Even when it does not apply, magical realism. Even when there is no magical realism in it.
Yeah,
it's coded for Hispanic, which it feels so cringy to me. That feels so cringy. Yeah, like how Stella got her groove back. I think it was originally classified when it first came out. It was classified as contemporary. Within a year, as its popularity grew, it then got reclassified, I think with the second or third publishing by the publisher, under urban something. or maybe it was just
Yeah.
urban.
Urban
but
fiction,
right? Because that was in the 90s when that came
Yeah.
out. Or am I
Yeah.
in the wrong decade? Yeah.
it was.
Yes,
It
90s.
got reclassified.
The original first publication, though, was the publisher instructed it to be put in contemporary. By the second or third printing, it was then labeled by the publisher as urban. And to the point that, like, because by the late 90s, urban as a section, which included romance, it included family drama, it included, like, it was really a catch-all drawer, too, was
It
so
was
popular.
set in a city. Urban was set in city.
Right, but it became so popular that even my mother was like, well, what about if you wrote a couple urban books? We could then query, and this was the late 90s, and I'm like, I think that's called racist. Because people would assume that I'm a black writer when I'm not. And that is not, I just was really not okay with it. Because, and she was like, no, there's white writers writing this. And I'm like, let us go, shall we? We were already at, I believe we were at Barnes and Noble. It was the late 90s. Or it might have been the very, very early 2000s, as in 2000. And we walked over to the labeled urban section. They had just set it up like the month before. And we looked on the back and we looked at every author description. And I'm like, there's literally nobody who's at least admitting they're white. And there's certainly no pictures of white writers. So, no. And that was like part of that discussion. But there were books in there that had been published several years prior and were listed as contemporary, but they'd moved them all over to urban. Even, again, as you said, when they don't necessarily take place in the city, there was stuff already that were like country romances with black people on the covers, and they were put in the urban section at Barnes & Noble in 2000.
Yeah.
I mean, it did take place in the Caribbean.
But I don't see, and honestly, as a contemporary fiction writer, yeah, I write sci-fi and I write fantasy, but as a contemporary fiction writer, that's what I consider myself. That's what I consider most of because my books, they keep getting classified as chick lit. They are not chick lit. Yes, there are funny things in them, but chick lit doesn't normally go to the more difficult subjects, in my experience. And there isn't a category for Western life with problems.
Mm-hmm.
That's just not a category. You know, well,
even though there are plenty
in the country
of
have
Western
problems
stories with drama, you know, with like that deal with, like, I have read, because again, Mississippi libraries pretty much didn't get stocked with new books until the 2000s. So pretty much in the 80s and 90s, all the books are from the 50s back. And so I was reading Westerns about family alcoholism and domestic abuse.
Also, can we get a movie or two about Bass Reeves, please? I mean, that is a real life character that there should be more movies about.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I'm sorry, I was just going to read Charlie's out because we have some visually impaired watchers sometimes. It's like LGBTQIA plus fiction. It is the place Amazon and other stores hide our stories. For example, my Shadow Phoenix saga never appeared in new releases until I changed the genre to action/adventure. Yeah, that's actively happening.
And Amy's you're in Australia. If somebody writes a slice of life reality fiction about, say, the Australian wildfires, would it be contemporary fiction, or would they lump it into adventure and foreign fiction?
It's hard to say because it's not an area I really go to when I'm looking for books. I can't really say too much. But I'd say they'd probably keep it contemporary in areas of that. I don't think they would.
Oddly enough, I saw for quite a while, it seemed that they kept putting books that take place in Australia under Westerns. And even when they were not, like...
Yeah.
Like, if it's about the outback, I guess it's sort of like Australia's Western.
Or maybe...
But they were not. These books were not. They were just like life in Sydney. It's not... There's no bush. There's no outback at all. I don't understand. But they would... Oh, it's Australia, so it goes in Westerns. And I'm like, are you talking about like because it's west of America? Like what is? I don't get it. I don't. There's not a single horse in this book.
Well, it's in any Asian fiction that's contemporary fiction, like Soul Knights, about the kid that was living in Seoul, South Korea, and he finished school, and then he was just trying to work and try to get up, and he was ended up having to like just work, and he was basically working himself to death. That's contemporary fiction. That is what's going on right now. If you live in where, if you're a young person from the university in Seoul, that's what's happening to you right now. But if you go to find it, it's like an Asian fantasy.
Oh.
Or what? It's in manga. Or it is not shelved as contemporary fiction.
I'm just looking up on a book site just to try and find something, but I'd say they'd probably keep it in contemporary fiction areas, but I'll try and find a book that's kind of close to that description of something set in like that, and then look it up to see where this website's placed it as an idea. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Good to know. We're about ready for a bio break. So again, I'm going to throw out these wild and controversial ideas of make sure you have something to drink. How about a snack or a walk break? Or how's your bladder doing? Let's be friendly with the kidneys. You know, you'll miss them when they're not working properly.
Yeah.
You think just because you have a spare, a backup, you'll be okay. And then when you don't, you'll miss them. That's what my mother said when she had one of her kidneys removed. She's like, you don't miss it till one is gone. And then you're like, oops.
Well, I think something that we need to think about, like everyone needs to think about, is if they're going to force us all out of the genre that we should be in, how are we going to label ourselves? Are we going to let ourselves be put in those boxes, or are we going to make our own boxes?
Mm-hmm. Pioneer better genres. Pioneer new, better, fantastic, maybe more honest genres.
Something not the big 4, 5, 4, 5, 4, 5. We don't know yet.
I think we're down to 3. When we come back in the third hour, we are going to brainstorm more solutions and talk about final thoughts. So it's going to be grand. I hope you will all come back. But in the meantime, maybe stretch them legs, and we will see you in a few. Maybe beep. Maybe beep. Maybe beep 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 boop. Well, here we are. And it's the top of the third hour. Home stretch. Or so she thought. Anyway. And Maggie is in the car driving home. All right. How did everybody do? Did you unpeople for a few minutes? Make it through?
I did not so much power nap as apparently I just power yawned.
I heard you power yawning for a while. I could hear you all the way down the hall. Like a small lion.
I get it from my dad.
Yeah. Yes. How about you, Amy?
I worked on my character dossier a little bit.
How's it going?
Good. It's really not productive at all, but it's fun. So, because I'm already got the character profile pretty much done. I'm just doing a very short version to look like it's in a classified file, and that's so cool.
Nice. That sounds a little. Carrie is out here calling me on my business. Says home stretch, says the one who streamed for how long on Saturday? LOL. Yes. I feel like I am a champion talker among the introverts.
Yes, we need you for that. Thank you.
I mean, let's be honest. Most of the reason why we do like 10-minute breaks at the end or the start of every hour is to give the introverts a little break from looking at people's faces or having to interact with humans. That's why I leave my camera on. I'm like, I'm just sitting here. Maybe I'll read some articles on my phone. What is a beanpole bear? Is that like a tiny, or is that like an enormous tardigrade that like climb? I've got ideas. Charlie worked on their space opera, A Safe Place to Hide from Everything. Excellent. Good work. Good work. I know you tease out of love, Carrie. Good stuff. So, let's see. Oh, and Eva watched the kid play outside with his papa and grab some Twizzlers. Think I'm going to go right outside later. Excellent.
Oh, nice.
Because it sounds like the weather is so nice right now, Eva, that might be a wonderful thing to do. Especially while you can. Since I hear those mountain winters are something else. If Continental Divide was anything to go by. Another contemporary story that I really enjoyed. The romance less so. Like it was barely romantic. I have to be honest. It was barely romantic, but I really enjoyed the whole walking around and hiking in the Rocky Mountains, and all that eagle footage and stuff was so cool.
There's the explanation.
So so tall his feet are off the end of the bed, so skinny he's a cartoon, yet so loud and rumbly and is like a bear.
Well, one of the things with like travel fiction is there's a lot of, it's really easy to blend for it to be contemporary fiction. It's a trip that someone has fictionalized taking, because there's a lot of things where people they don't talk about the mundane parts of taking a cruise. They don't talk about the hard parts of getting through the airport to get to wherever you're going. And so a lot of travel fiction could be considered contemporary fiction.
I mean, Under the Tuscan Sun.
Well, how about, what is his name? Who wrote My Family and Other Animals, about his family's move to Corfu? It was originally at my library, it was labeled as a travel log. And it was not, y'all. It was not. Let's see.
Well, that's what I found just earlier is because I went and looked up a couple of Australian books set in the outback. And one of them was somebody's telling of their trip through the outback, riding camels with a dog. And that wasn't necessarily fiction, but was sectioned under travel and holiday.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of in between both of those, really.
Yeah. My Family and Other Animals is by Gerald Jarrell, by the way, about his family's move to Corfu from England in the 40s, late 40s. I liked it a lot because I was a child who desperately wanted to move away from North Mississippi and, quite frankly, my family. So I like to fantasize about getting to live with other people's families, if only for a break. But when it was written, it was actually written, gosh, what, decades after it took place?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, not that long. So it came out in 1956, and I think they actually moved there after World War One. I may have moved in the 20s or 30s. But yeah, he wrote about it once he was an adult. He was, I think, the youngest or the second to youngest child. And I just loved all of these descriptions of rural life in Greece.
Well, if we're talking about like contemporary fiction that could be listed as travel fiction, Grapes of Wrath.
Mm-hmm.
Grapes of Wrath, if you take kind of like lean away from the drama aspect of it, it really could be looked at as travel fiction because it's literally this family's move to California and what it was like trying to make that move then.
I mean, if we're going to talk about that, like, I would venture to say Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is not only travel fiction, but at the time when it came out, contemporary.
I love that movie.
I have to be honest, that movie,
helium.
The shower rings and what you can do with them, selling them, and try how to market to all these different people, truly gave me and my family inspiration for, you don't have to be a victim of circumstance. You can do your best to exercise your own agency.
But the thing is while it would be contemporary fiction, we would look at it as contemporary fiction because his wife died and they were really having some really terrible times.
Mm-hmm.
It would get shutted off to a different, like, dark comedy or something.
Right. Yeah, I think, like, at the time, like, my parents thought of it as a contemporary holiday film. But now I do not think that it would necessarily be categorized as such. Because, yeah, there's some darkness in that film. Of course, I found that comforting that, even when you're having a very difficult, especially emotional time in life, that doesn't mean you can't have fun and you can't have adventure and you can't have people drive you nuts and then end up at their family holiday meal.
To me,
it's multifaceted.
That should be more the embodiment of contemporary fiction than the fluffy light.
I agree.
That is what contemporary fiction is being cast out as now. I mean, it's when you have to look at things, when you have to worry about things, that where are people going? What are people doing? And how did they get there? It's the journey, the way they got on the journey is just as important as the destination.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I also suddenly had this thought of, I wonder if part of the problems we're facing with contemporary fiction and what is it not, is also down to the side effects of the untruth, the unreality of reality television. That most people do not realize just how much all those scenes are scripted, how much they are told what to say and emote on these supposedly, these are just real people stuck around each other. when no, they're not. This is not how reality works. And so contemporary fiction is also getting skewed by these concepts of what's reality and it's not. Like, no, you still have to work with people. You don't get to just have, like, oh, I don't like them, so I'm going to argue with them and they're just going to disappear. No, you still have to go to work the next day with them too. Contemporary fiction used to be about, all right, how do you live with people you don't always like your family, like coworkers,
neighbors,
and
even friends. I mean, people who you've known for years, and then there's a rough patch.
Well,
for whatever the reason.
And it's like, it's not always going to be grimdark. It's
right.
Contemporary life's not always going to be grim. People overcome things, and they have moments of comedy. Life is about laughter and tears. It is about facing what you're overcoming versus trying to not let it defeat you. And it's, do you overcome or do you succumb? Right. And I think that's where contemporary fiction needs to get back on their true path, because I appreciate that everybody wants the cozy. Sorry, traffic's moving again. Everybody wants the cozy, and we would all love the Hallmark fairy tale, but that's not really contemporary. That's fantasy.
Yeah, life is messy. Real life is real messy. But that doesn't invalidate it. Just because life is messy, that doesn't mean you're doing it wrong.
No.
Nobody is living their life wrong when their life gets super messy and awkward and weird.
And
I was actually just
saying, you can't fix things other people do to you.
No, I was literally just thinking about it. Maggie said something that reminded me of I came across this article a couple weeks ago that was something to the effect of, do you know what the little door in your house is for? And I was like, go on and tell me about the little door. What you got? Is it to what is it to keep? And it shows a picture, and it was that it's for card tables. And I was like, people really did not know that. Okay, cool. And the more I read, the more I realized people, I guess people in the 20th century, especially younger people, maybe did not realize how, especially before cable was even necessarily widespread, let alone streaming, card tables were used weekly minimum. Like, people used to often go over to neighbors' houses, especially in the suburbs, and play cards at night. And it wasn't just the weekends. It was like Tuesday night, we've got bridge over here. And then Thursday nights, we go 3 doors down across the other way in the neighborhood to play poker or to play, something else.
Canasta,
thank you. I was like, and Pinochle and all of these games. But what I remember hearing in the 80s as a kid was, because I would ask, what is this little door for at people's houses? And they're like, I don't know. And it's like, why do you have a little door special for a folding table? What is this about? And sometimes it wasn't just for the folding tables, also for the folding chairs. And, and I remember a few moms mentioning when I was young, it was the civil rights movement in Mississippi was such a divisive issue in the 50s that a lot of people stopped using their card tables and therefore inviting people over, because people would be in the middle of bridge and just mention something they had read in the newspaper, and somebody would flip the table. And it was like, I never thought Bill from down the street would ever act so rude. I was literally just mentioning the headline. I thought we were going to have a nice discussion about it, and he's flipping the table just because a bunch of people got on a bus and wouldn't move to the back. Why is he flipping a table at my house? People are acting, and I'm like, and so when everybody was talking about the unfortunateness of, I don't know, let's say the last 4.5, 5 years in America, I'm just like, this is not really new here, because we have been dealing with this off and on for quite a long time. But yeah, it's the reason why people stopped playing a lot of card games, Pinochle and Canasta around in Mississippi, was because you never knew which neighbor was going to lose their top when somebody just mentions an actual fact This is just how people are.
Well,
But that's contemporary problem. And I would have been very interested to read stories about how did people deal with when Thelma, totally was like, I'm taking all of my cheese dip home. Goodbye. And not talking to them for a month in the neighborhood, how awkward that got. I would definitely read this story though. Because I don't know. So yeah, go on, Maggie. What?
Unfortunately, because
Maggie, I think you're breaking
during
up.
the Portland, am I losing you?
Repeat what you just said, because it was breaking up. I couldn't make out any of it.
Discuss
mountains.
Anything. Oh, I think I'm going to lose them. Anything political around, or she just lost her shit. Like it was like she didn't want to know about it, didn't want to think about it.
Maggie, the mountains have gotten you, I think. Yep.
Yep, the gremlins got you, Maggie.
There. Okay. Well, I don't know. She might come back, she might not. But Amy, did you have something to add as well? No. Okay.
I'd say one of the powers, though, with the indie publishing is you can now say what you consider yours to be, which is contemporary or such. I think another thing, I don't remember where I heard it, but someone was saying recently on some show I listened to about with your beta readers, ask them what they would put your story under, to give you ideas of what does it stand out most towards in their mind.
Yeah, definitely with the ability to do indie publishing, it definitely stops the gatekeeping and it stops the genres of books being placed in the incorrect genres, and it allows maybe to possibly bring things back to what contemporary actually is and stop creating these micro genres.
I think there may still, however, I would say to indie authors, be warned. You may still get feedback from readers who have internalized the issues with genre classing and traditional publishing, and who may disagree with your own genre classification. But I mean, I got to be honest. As long as you're still finding readers, it's probably going to be okay. Don't take it personally. Just okay, whatever.
Can't please everyone.
Yeah, and also we live in a world where no one is forced to read anything.
Yeah. There's still people will sit down, watch a 20-minute video and then say I hated this and I never liked this topic. It's like
it's like I would not take it personally. I'm always amazed anytime I'm reading a Bored Panda article and the comments of nobody is making you look at all these pictures. Why are you acting like this picture or this whatever comment was directed at you personally when the person did not know you literally exist?
Yep.
So, but you see it all the time on Facebook and other places of, are you aware that you are not the actual center of the universe? We are not posting just in case you see our posts. It's odd, but it's just more of just dealing with people.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, the internalized bias in readers. I know. I have such controversial views. I did, however, Charlie had put in some comment that I am blind to about their own genre classification for themselves. I saw it at one point. Yes, there it is. Psychedelic furry adventure fantasy. I love that, and I wish that was a larger categorization. Oh, which does remind me, I did forget to end that poll. So,
is it not?
Nope. Now I've ended it. Glory may have forgotten. No, I am not the center of the universe, and it is a relief to me. It is a comfort that the world will keep spinning no matter how much I mess up.
I mean, Gloria and I used to talk a lot when we were little about a scene in the second Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy trilogy.
The restaurant at the end of the universe.
Yeah. Of one of the punishments in the book for people who've committed, great crimes was to go into what was called a total perspective vortex, where they would have the entire concept of the universe crammed into their brain, and they would see exactly where they existed in the universe. And this drove most people.
They are.
And this drove most people insane to realize just how.
Well, it drove everyone insane except for Zaphod Beeblebrox,
who knew they were the center of the universe.
Yeah.
And through a coincidence of things, like, that's what told them. But yeah, like, versus we're like, isn't it nice to know, like, you're not, like, the world keeps going without you.
That no matter how much you mess up in your own life and in your own decisions, it really doesn't affect most other people at all. And the few people it affects, it doesn't really negatively affect them much. Adjacent to the center. Like the Watcher in the MCU, she sees and knows all, but has taken a vow not to intervene. Oh, dear. Yes, the poll results are in. We had 13 votes. When did you last read contemporary fiction? 46% said this century. 23% said this year or last year. 23% said last decade. And 7% said this month or last month. I think that speaks a lot to contemporary fiction is not necessarily appealing to a broad spectrum of people.
Mm.
And there could be several reasons for that. It could probably be multiple reasons.
I think, though, contemporary themes or subgenres in something else, people still will like, snippets of or whatever within something else.
I agree.
Well, I think it's like we were talking a few weeks back about romance. Romance will tell you all the tropes that are going to be involved. You know what you're getting into. With contemporary fiction, it's really hard to know just what type of contemporary fiction you're getting into from reading a lot of blurbs. I think people really don't use the blurbs to help people understand what kind of tropes and concepts they're getting into, like they do in fantasy and sci-fi and romance now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also what makes it difficult to kind of stay in and the appeal of contemporary fiction, because what's going to happen is this, like Megan was saying, like they really like Wally Lamb for catharsis.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a while since I've read actually the blurbs and stuff for Wally Lamb, but if I remember right, Wally does tend to actually, with their blurbs, really give you a good sense of what kind of story you're getting involved in. There's not, major surprises. So, and Wally delivers. And so I think that's also part of the difficulty is a lot of contemporary fiction, because it's often used as a junk drawer for we don't have somewhere else, but we also don't know quite how to describe it. But we want everyone to feel included, so they'll read it.
Mm-hmm.
That it's trying to appeal to everyone, so it appeals to no one type difficulty.
Mm-hmm. I would agree. Yeah. It is easy to get lost in the fiction section. I'd like to let everybody know that Pratchett has warned people about L space. And that is there is a special dimensional space in many larger libraries where you can get lost and possibly walk into other alternate dimension libraries. One must be careful. Charlie says, it is too general and empty for a genre name. I know what I'm looking for in a romance, mystery, space opera, or supernatural horror. Contemporary is a grab bag, and I already have cats.
Yeah. It's very general.
Yes. I really don't care for the genre name at all. I think that is problematic. I've said that, but that's part of why it only appeals to some people for a little while. And then contemporary moves on. And what is contemporary? It is truly this catch-all drawer of society. It's the oddest thing.
Yeah, I think also my description of Wally.
Yeah, I think also like with contemporary, it changes depending on like what's going on in current society as what's classed as contemporary and things like that. But where you have other genres, romance is romance. Whereas even sci-fi, even books from the 80s are still classed as sci-fi because they're exploring as a what future could be kind of side of things. It's still not necessarily current. And even though we have more high tech than some things, or some things are still more high tech in the book, they're still you know, sci-fi. So, but contemporary seems to kind of float and move a little bit more, and then yeah,
I agree.
And that's where you get the things like we were talking about earlier, where they kind of move into other genres a little bit more sometimes, like the Breakfast Club has changed and it's shifted a little bit.
Yeah, because like in the 80s, The Breakfast Club and Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, it made sense that those were both contemporary films. But now neither of them would more than likely be classified under contemporary.
Yeah, because things have changed.
So it's something to keep in mind. It's something to think about. And it's definitely something to be aware of. Like my issues with contemporary becoming this whole idea of chicklet, and therefore then it's always about female problems or relationships. That's women's issues. It's like, if you've ever read a military drama, then you are aware of manly issues, and it is just as dramatic and just as whiny. So
and just as many relationships that are all messy
so
and dirty.
many relationships. Oh my goodness! Everybody's talking behind each other's back. Just it's exhausting. So I think that there's also contemporary is definitely prone to a certain amount of sexism. More narrow casting ahoy. So,
but I think it also, but like as few people like Eva and Spence have also pointed out, like this is now the new power of having tags, of having, you know, descriptors that you can search by and narrow down, so you don't have to deal with these giant monolithic genre concepts. And where do you fit it? You can have just a lot of smaller tropes and tags that you fit with, and you can, your readers can look for, well, I want this kind with this.
Carrie says, what about using contemporary as part of other genres? Like someone in a Facebook group suggested my series is contemporary fantasy because it is not in a big city, so not technically urban. But the time period is modern.
I mean, I like the use of that. Like, it does give you a better sense of what kind of fantasy. You know, it's not high fantasy.
Right.
I mean, technically, it actually used to be called low fantasy.
Yes.
But yeah, of contemporary fantasy does help give your reader a quick sense of what they're getting into.
Yeah, that's sort of like practical magic would be now, you know, I could see it being labeled as contemporary fantasy, and that would make sense.
Yeah, well, the more tags you add, the more clear it is what it's going to be about anyway, so.
Yes, Charlie. Sexism in publishing? The industry isn't dying. It is going extinct for a reason. I absolutely agree. I will not cry when traditional publishing in its modern format disappears.
When it's just Penguin Hachette.
Let me tell you, children, sometimes about the evil doings of Hachette. Like, people talk about Skynet, but the French and Hachette, that's some straight up evil stuff. I know, isn't it wonderful, Charlie? We definitely have all sorts of interesting.
She did. The writer did just have on Reddit a AMA.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I keep meaning to send it to you, and then I
was
forget.
like, really? You didn't want to let me know? Maggie's back.
I'm only back for a minute. I'm stopped on the top of the hill where I have a signal.
Oh dear.
Commitment and in shadow. So now you're ready to drop your truth, honey.
Yep.
Where's your
The
voice
shade
modulator?
is real.
The shade is real. Contemporary fiction has become the bastard child of good feelings and delusional fluffy cakeness.
Right.
It is the murder corn of genres.
See, murder corn.
What is murder corn? Does it
I don't
involve
even know.
unicorns or farming?
Unicorns are evil soul-sucking creatures who look all pretty and nice on the outside until they suck your soul out and you die. That's what's happened to contemporary fiction. It has sucked out the soul of the literariness of reality and people being able to say, this is what life is. This is where it goes. For the coziness of everything is happy. Let's all pretend we're June Cleaver.
I mean, that really is a form of fantasy.
Yeah.
Honestly, like Carrie had somebody recommend on Facebook that she classified hers as contemporary fantasy. But I'm like, no, that is what contemporary fantasy is. Everything is awesome and perfect. And all the mortgages are always paid and all the children are always loved and fed. And no one ever fights and everybody gets orgasms.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
Mm-hmm. I was kind of very unsure what you were meaning because the first thing that popped into my head was like corn on the cob, and I'm like,
well, when
What?
corn be murderous,
what? I am
it's death
unsure.
butter. That's what it is, Amy. It's death butter.
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah, no, I don't mind being classified as urban or Western. Western would make more sense because my book, the series I'm talking about is set in Western Colorado, but when they start boxing like someone just writing about their life that is not your basic white person, and all of a sudden it's no longer contemporary fiction.
Mm-hmm.
You know, life in LA, life in Las Vegas, life on the border of Texas, life in Atlanta or Florida, or in Ybor City, outside of Tampa.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of good Cuban fiction. A lot of.
But yeah, instead calling it urban even when it does not take place.
It starts sounding like just code for,
it's code
racist.
for people of color.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's code for POC.
Certain kinds or certain races, rather than
and
just contemporary life.
People
Contemporary life
color,
includes people of color, for heaven's sakes.
People of color, people that are rural, people that are suburban, people that are urban. There are different kinds of suburban.
Right.
There are micro cities of ethnic groups that should be able to say, this is my contemporary life where I live right now, that are not being allowed to say that because the term contemporary now means Stepford.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it's like it shouldn't be to me noticeable. We watched The Great North yesterday, which is just a cute Fox cartoon series, takes place in Alaska. And I was just nicely surprised as they're telling all these little stories. They're making funny stories to keep someone awake, and they're showing visuals of it. But all the characters throughout in this town are nicely divergent. They're not all white people in Alaska. There is everyone there, which is what Alaska really is like.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone goes to Alaska, not just crazy white people. But to me, it's
some people have been there for tens of thousands of years, and some people just moved in the last 10 years. It is what it is, like any other place.
Yes.
But it's still, it shouldn't still be surprising to see oh, look, it's actually mixed.
Yeah, I think that as authors, especially as indie authors, we need to start trying to claim back the contemporary genre. Mm-hmm. That it's just not vanilla cake with white icing.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah.
It's all the cake and all the icing and even a pie or two on the side.
Yes. I definitely agree. Yeah, even I did not feel necessarily comfortable with writing stories in the contemporary genre because I was like, but my stuff is not eat, pray, love, and everything is perfect in a middle class suburb. And it's like, I'm probably not writing that. So I am not thinking about that genre rather than I have internalized the bias. And it's similar to a lot of the stories that I thought of writing many years ago. All were about young white boys, young white men. Why would I not write about female main characters? Why would I not write about the people that I'm surrounded by? And it was because the books that I had available to me were all about cishet white males, like,
And the
so.
horrors of Dear Evan Hansen.
Oh God, that Dear Evan Hansen, the ghosts of Dear Evan Hansen. So yes, color in your own fiction. But yeah, I thought nobody would be interested in what I have to write about because what I have to write about does not involve middle class suburbs. Because
I mean, cyberpunk.
I've never been middle class. Well, technically I was for a solid 18 months out of my entire 40 plus years. And it was a wonderful, wonderful moment, but it had its prices to be paid. Yes, the view, Maggie.
I know, that's really nice, actually.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
The trees are gorgeous right now. By the end of the week, all these leaves are going to be gone.
Kind of gives me some Outback vibes, actually, from what I'm seeing.
Yeah, I mean, I've been meaning to ask you about the difference between the bush and the Outback.
Yeah. I have to go.
One's got more bushes. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Bye, Maggie.
Thank you.
I'm literally stopped on the side of a dirt road up on a hill.
She's so committed.
You do what you got to do.
Yes. Thank you, Maggie. Love you, honey.
Love you. Be blessed.
Love you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yes, hooray for Western Colorado.
Yes.
It's gorgeous.
Yes. It kind of reminds me of Wyola, which is like a smaller town or just out that way.
Mm-hmm.
But now the bush is like where you've got heaps of gum trees, you've got heaps of bushes, like it's dirty or sandier, whereas the outback tends to be the more barren, like the red dirt, the few bushes sparsely, around. That's kind of my definition of the difference.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because I pretty much thought it was similar, the bush and the outback,
The bush is like forested or with, the gum trees and a lot of like plants.
Versus the outback is more like prairie-like or grasslands, or not even grass.
It's just dirt.
Not quite
just
desert,
red sand.
Dirt lands. It's welcome to the dirt.
But
Yeah.
apparently you haven't updated the show description.
Yes, I'm literally looking it up because Maggie was just showed up. That is why.
Give us just a minute, Margaret.
We did not know that she was coming, and then I forgot. So hold up. And I will put her stuff in.
And that's why we need to get Maggie more subscribers.
Yes. All right. If you update your show description, you will see Maggie's contact info. All of her many wonderful links.
She is a great writer.
She is a very talented writer.
In a lot of different genres.
Yes. All right. There we go. It is now truly updated. I even removed how YouTube always likes to put in extra, random things in the HTML code, and I just cleaned it up. Because I am that person. Yep. Yes, it's hard to tell, isn't it? It's Penumbra. It's Mama Maggie.
Yep.
She is so good. I agree. She's got stories on Vela. She has stuff on Inkit and Amazon and all the places. All the places. Very talented. I knew she needed to go, which is why I didn't ask her to do an outro, because I knew she really did. She had told me her schedule before, so I was surprised we even got her on the road at all. So
yeah, it's nice of her to pop in.
Yes, she definitely has some convictions about this, because she's been told several times. She told us earlier in the week how she's been told by people, including readers, several times that her writing doesn't belong in contemporary. It should be urban dark or urban grim, because her main characters are people of color dealing with alcoholism and other forms of addiction and divorce.
Yeah, that's still contemporary.
And they're like, readers are private messaging her this. She's like, no. So she definitely had plenty to say. And for a variety of circumstances out of her control, she suddenly was not able to join us. So we didn't know we were going to get her as a surprise, but the internet's aligned. What happened. It was delightful. Yes, the gatekeeping is pretty problematic.
Yeah.
And also the sexism gatekeeping. So it's not just the racism gatekeeping. Also the sexism gatekeeping is truly problematic. I definitely encourage authors to write with male characters, main characters, who are, again, just dealing with contemporary problems. Again, like planes, trains, and automobiles. A heart-touching story that, honest to God, made me cry the first several times I watched that movie. And it's about two men.
My story...
road trip.
My story that I'm writing on Vela would be contemporary fiction, if not for a little bit of...
interdimensional travel?
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, you can have more than one categorizing on Vela. You can have two.
At least right now, it is mostly just, two siblings handling grief in life. Contemporary problems.
Bella is not available for me.
Oh, no. I'm so sorry.
I know.
I don't think it's fair.
Like, they might bring it in like a year later, but it's just so annoying. They've got like the tax or whatever, the travel tax or whatever, as if like they were shipping it physically, but it's digital. Just give us the shows on time. Give us the things. It's digital, goddammit.
Astral travel stuff. Hello. I agree. Absolutely agree with you, Amy.
So annoying.
I got to be honest. Vela is not. You could tell Vela was like pushed out. It wasn't really ready.
Okay.
So, for instance, I have a Kindle tablet. There is no way for me to read Vela on here.
I read that.
On a Fire tablet, except I have to essentially go through the browser option onto Amazon and then go to Vela to then read it.
Wow.
So it looks, and then it looks like, just like it looks if I'm trying to read it on my browser on my laptop. And so you could tell they weren't ready, because there's no way to read it on the Kindle app on this Fire tablet. So they're not ready. I don't know why they pushed this out. I assume they needed more rocket money quickly.
Or I'd say they probably wanted to get on the jump with lockdowns and things and people reading at home. I don't know. That's my guess anyway.
Oh, great. Now there's Vela scam accounts. Great.
Oh, dear. Of course there are.
Cool. Everything's cool. But on Vela, there is no contemporary option. I just opened it up. Since, yes, I do kind of keep these things. Primary category options are action and adventure, dystopian, erotica, fantasy, historical fiction, humor, lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender fiction, mystery, paranormal, romance, teen and young adult, and thriller.
I want to see what a book with the first three would be like.
Action, adventure, dystopian, erotica.
Yeah, it sounds very interesting.
So like they are obviously just like, no, contemporary is not a thing. No.
Wait, say what was the first one?
Action adventure.
It's got to exist. I'm sure there's probably
Oh,
one
it
like that.
does. It does in
think.
hentai.
Oh yeah, I'm sure there's
I've come
plenty.
across that one in several.
Anime be doing things.
Yes, the Japanese are like, genres. What are those? We're just gonna write a
All
story.
the
Come to us.
things.
I think
Like
it's
isekai.
interesting, though, that Vela does not have a contemporary genre designation, and yet Amazon itself in Amazon Books does have a contemporary designation. So I feel like that says a lot about publishers forcing that.
Mhm.
And Amazon's like, yeah, no, publishers are not involved in Vela, so we're going to do it the way we want to do it.
Yeah.
I think that's very telling. So it is definitely something to think about, because we organized this entire season based on Amazon sales by genre.
Ah,
Yes.
the secret's out.
We did it like an upsilon. So, or an upside down bell curve, if you wish. So romance is the number one seller. So that's why we did that first. The number two seller, genre-wise, is crime/mystery. So that is why it is our last subject. November 29th, we will be talking about crime and mystery. And then by popularity of sales, by number of sales, we then kept going in. So we are in contemporary and historical, which are the two least selling genres.
I think I missed the crime one, which sucks because I did a
crime is
course.
November 29th.
I needed.
Crime is really popular.
Well, I did a
Right.
course at uni in crime fiction.
Oh,
And then that started off my second book. So
well, I think you may be working that one. That's why,
29th.
because I have a question mark for your name by November 22nd. And so remember, because you said every
Okay.
other. So
yeah, so 29th you said.
yes, ma'am. It is Monday the
Okay.
29th is we're talking about crime and mystery.
All right, let me just check. Unless I get interviews and things, I'll
You'll
see.
say, I'm not available for that day at work. And they'll be like,
Yeah.
oh,
Oh,
she
yeah.
must have work. And you're like, "You'll
Gladly
never know."
take that day off.
No,
I
I'm
took
teasing you.
no, you kid, but literally last Friday I took that off because I was like, no, I need writing time here. Downtime, thank you.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So as we wrap up, Amy, would you like to do an outro? It is entirely optional. You don't
Yeah,
have
sure. Yeah, I'll do one.
to. Okay,
If you don't know me from popping around on lots of different streams all over the place, I seem to stream hop a lot. Yeah, I'm Amy. I'm also Shiny Knight on Twitch, where I stream Thursday, Friday, Saturdays, and I do writing sprints as well as gaming. I'm currently playing Mass Effect. And I'm also currently writing book 1 in my Cyberpunk series. And you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram under author_Amy. Yeah.
all the links are below.
Yes.
Tom, you feel like it or no?
I'm gonna say well, why not real quick?
I mean, you do have a Vela story.
Yeah, it's like I just
Do it,
posted
do
it in the links. I'm Tom of Tom's Hot Takes. Mostly you see me here with Glory, and on Wednesdays on Twitch, also with Glory. I've got a story on Vela called A Different Universe by Thomas Finn. And catch me around. I help do a lot of editing and story development with friends.
And your Vela link is down below as well. All right. Hi, I'm Glory, and if you have not figured it out, you are on the channel Glory Writes the Blues. My links are also down below. I stream on YouTube and Twitch every week. My schedule is mostly actually on Twitch right now, with Wednesday evenings at 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern, streaming with Tom, where at least for, let us say, this month and possibly through November, on Wednesday nights, we talk about the next upcoming Monday show as we actually prepare for it. And then sometimes we also play games, and of course we do eat dinner. On Thursdays on Twitch at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, I host Coffee Bunny Cafe with Cat Leo Writing. We alternate between whose Twitch stream, and hopefully the auto hosting works. So you've got that too for something to come do. We hang out. The only thing I can promise is there will be chaos. There may also be coffee, bagels, and crochet. Who knows what else? Gaming sometimes. Sometimes people write, edit. We just have a grand old time. And we do that every Thursday, one way or another. We do that. So we hope you'll be able to join us for that. So let me seg you into next Monday. We're going to talk about historical genre writing. Woohoo! It's going to be wonderful. I'm sure. If Nia and Chandra can forgive me. It will be Monday, November 1st, which is the first day of NaNoWriMo. So it is apparently highly controversial that we have decided to stream on that day.
Let alone historical.
Apparently people were like, I want to come, but how dare you do it the first day of Nano? So here we are. We hope you will join us, maybe for a little break in between writing. I know everybody wants to catch those words the moment they're out of the gate for Nano. But we will be talking about historical genre writing. It's kind of an interesting genre because, at least I'm of the opinion, that all historical writing is in its own way contemporary. Mm-hmm. There's anything you write about in a historical setting is still about modern problems. Because it is not appealing to modern readers to read about actual problems in a narrative, in a fiction, that people in a previous time period had. It doesn't quite translate. It doesn't exactly apply. So all historical fiction contains modern problems. And so essentially, that's kind of also why we wanted to have contemporary followed by historical, since we really feel like they have a duality to them. And we wanted to talk about that. So that is what we intend to do.
Oh.
Yes? What?
Give me just a moment. There's a comment that just posted, but it hasn't shown up for us. I think you might enjoy.
Oh, we're waiting for the comment to come through StreamYard?
Yes, there it is.
I scheduled me and Chandra so we can make it next week. Oh, excellent. So, yes, Nia and Chandra will definitely be joining us to give us all the tea on historical writing. I originally, a few years ago, tried to be writing historical. I have not abandoned those stories. So it's not from an outsider perspective that I have this. I've at least outlined plots for several historical novels. Because who doesn't love a costume drama? I will admit it. And in fact, I did work on a Regency era novel simply because I knew that I could sew the outfits for the cover. I was like, hey, I'm familiar with this time period and I can do these outfits. They are relatively easy compared to some of the more complicated fripperies of like some of Victorian era clothing. And I was like, hey, Tom could take pictures of me and a friend who's also a model and we can be on the cover. And that's why I have done a lot of research on Regency, which, hey, if you're into research, did you know we have a Discord server? And in it, I at least have posted links to nearly all of my past several years of research from various time periods in there in case it's useful to anyone else. So if you need an invite to our Discord server, be sure to let me know. We'd love to have you join us. And also pointing out, the after party will be held in our Discord server in the Voice Community Hangout directly after this show. So we hope we will get to see you. And thank you so much for coming. Your support means so much to us. In fact, without you all here, we would not still be doing this because we can talk to nobody at home. Thank you so much for coming, y'all. And see you next week. Bye-bye.